The girl and Royle are breathing heavily. Royle announces that he has the hero skill. The voice from the horned helmet says that Royle is quite skilled and asks if he would like to become his servant. Demon Lord Lilia's Noth announces that he will grant special privileges. He shoos and expresses irritation, then exclaims that this is too much. Cynthia says to do it right. Cynthia is reported to have the holy martyr skill. Royle nods. The girl reports the sound of a kiss. Rinka says that deception is unacceptable, turning to him. He listens to her. Royle reports that that's all. The guy says he didn't say anything. The girl screams, "What happened?" and is surprised. The man asks what's going on. The girl calls for the owner. Sarah says that if Royle cheats, she will fry him. He tells Sarah her name, and the girl says that she understands. The girl says that they are all the most important. The boy and girl listen. The woman laughs and challenges him to attack her. Royle says it's time to end this, and the woman says the name of the spell, Lilia's Note. The man agrees. A woman with horns stands at the entrance to a building, while a man in armor, a girl with a sword, and a girl with a key run toward her. The man in armor makes a thumping sound, after which he exclaims. The knight announces that it's already evening and time to finish work. Royle explains that everything above one is just his imagination. He's not a hero, just a gatekeeper. The man reports that things were just starting to get better. A girl says she likes to daydream. A man, a woman, and a girl listen to her. Royle says he's been working in this position for 15 years, where he spends all day standing still, and that he's able to continue thanks to his imagination. He says he's stuck in this job. The boy says he's 15 years old, and the man confirms he's 15. The man says the boy has a great physique and asks if he'd like to join the knights. The boy explains that was the reason. The text on his hand says he has a large physique. The third man says they are in Sakurana City, and the second man says they are knights. The guy reports that he has a strong build. A guy says he heard about a new recruit. The man explains it's the one with the insane physique. Royle says he's terrible with both a sword and a spear. Another man says he has no talent at all and it's all just for show. Royle reports that he's doing well. The man asks Royle how things are going and says he seems to be training hard. The man says it might be worth a try. Royle explains that they have a small but elite corps of mages. The man explains that everyone has different talents. Royle says that since they've already hired him, there's no other way. The man says these recruiters are a hassle. He says it's magic. The guy says he heard there's a trade-off between talent for magic and talent for martial arts, and that you can't have both at the same time. He explains that if he's so bad at martial arts, then the woman says it's magic. The boy informs him that if he fails the test, he will be exiled from the clan. The man explains that the test is a test of strength and spirit, and only the strongest will be allowed to remain. The man explains that everyone must be prepared for any difficulties and never give up. The guy says he can't believe it happened. The man says there's no need to strain himself, explaining that it's magic. The birds sit on a branch and chirp. Then one of them takes off. The woman says Royle should just stand there, and he agrees. Royle asks if he should stand there, and the woman explains that he guards the northern gate. Royle explains that few people pass by, monsters almost never appear, and you just have to stand still, not moving or talking, except in emergency cases when you can send messages. That's their job. The man says that if he could use magic, he would. The man recites a spell of great magic, a hellish thunderclap. The man says that, of course, Royle, he knew he would come. He says he knows what Sasha wants to say. Sasha says she wants to talk to him. He hears the others saying that this is the final battle and calling for him to go. Royle says he just stood there and dreamed for 15 years. The man says there's a message for him and asks why he's thinking. The man orders him to go to the commander's office. He's silent. The guy turns to him. The man announces that he's firing Royle and asking him not to come back tomorrow. Royle remains silent. The man explains that their squad has finally decided to implement magical tools. Royle says, "Ah," and tries to stop the man, saying, "Wait." He reports that an automated magical instrument for surveillance and interception will replace it. Royle laughs, then continues laughing and sighing, and then quietly laughs. Two men say Royle has an excellent physique and his future is already determined. The other men explain that the newcomer Royle is poor with swords and magic and advise him to just stand still. Royle says this is his 15-year task and asserts that he is. Royle says he is free and shouts. Royle says he hasn't made a voice like that in 15 years, calling it a life of inertia. The man coughs and screams in pain. The man says he'll definitely quit this month, but it's been 15 years. He says he hasn't let go of this voice for 15 years and chose it this way. Royle explains that this is why he would choose again. The guy announces that he will become an adventurer. Royle says these fantasies are his dreams. He says that the heroes of the stories, and now it's his turn to be the main character. He says that now is the beginning of his story and adventure. Then it says that a week has passed. The guy says that there are no stories or adventures at all. Royle explains that he was helping an elderly woman at an event and injured his back as a result, and apologizes to her. He reports that the further he walks, the more the landscape changes, and it's no longer like at the gate, but everything is fine. He says that if there's any event, it will happen when he gets to the city soon. He explains that this city is Melki, a city of adventurers. The man explains that there will certainly be many events there. The girl breathes heavily, lowering her arms and looking down. Then she takes a step, continuing to breathe heavily. The girl reports that she is breathing heavily. Royle is silent, the woman is silent. The guy says the heroine is here. The girl says that if she's the main character, she can't ignore someone in need. She explains that this event happened before they even reached the city and size. The guy says he'll approach her, asks if everything's okay, and notices that she appears injured, then tells her she's okay. The girl replies that she's not. Then the girl pays attention and asks if everything's okay. The man explains that dangerous animals live in this forest and advises her to be careful. The girl says she understands and promises to follow his advice. Royle says he has barely spoken for the past 15 years, and expresses fear. The guy says that if he's the main character, he can't ignore someone in need, and explains that that's exactly what he was thinking when he spoke, and that his resolve was good, at least. The girl reports that words are failing her. The guy says he's not suspicious and just thought she was hurt. The girl says everything's fine and asks her to calm down, saying that it will make up for the situation. The man says akeo, aya, akeo, eireko, kukeo, kujiekeo, mo, kukeo, kukukeo. The girl reports that she is cold. The man says, oh. Royle says it's not working and explains that she's completely terrified of him. He adds that his build only makes things worse and that it always happens that way. Royle says that misunderstandings lead to misunderstandings and that he needs to clear them up. The girl reacts with surprise. Royle falls to the ground, and the girl closes her eyes. He says he can't get up. The girl says he shouldn't do that. Royle says he messed everything up and repeats it with irritation, then laughs. The girl laughs and says, ah. The man apologizes, saying he's been too cautious. The girl asks if the man can stand up, and the man says yes. The man thanks the girl and apologizes, and the girl expresses displeasure. The girl reports that she slightly sprained her ankle. Royle says he knew she was injured and confirms it. Royle makes a sound of surprise and says, ah. The girl laughs. He reports that the heroine has arrived, and this event happened before they even reached the city. He says that if he is the main character, he cannot ignore someone who needs help. Royle says he's an idiot and very stupid, he's always like that. The man explains that the girl is seriously injured and can barely walk, yet she helped lift someone as big as him. The man explains that the girl is simply kind, not some kind of fantasy. He explains that all he does is get lost in his fantasies. He says he's sorry for keeping her waiting, and the girl confirms that she understands and calls him Lord. Royle says it must have hurt a lot and suggests healing the wound now. The girl confirms that she injured her leg, twisting it slightly. The man asks if she injured her leg. In the top right panel, a man casts the Great Breath of Life spell. In the top left panel, a girl announces that she has been healed and admires Royle. In the middle left panel, A man reacts with surprise to the situation. In the bottom left panel, a man says that this isn't what he wanted and asks. The girl announces that she is walking. The next panel shows the girl's foot taking a step. The girl says it doesn't hurt anymore, and the man says the wound has healed and expresses surprise, calling it incredible. The man thanks the girl. The girl remains silent. The guy says there's no need to force yourself because magic is what it is. The man says he's useless at both fencing and magic, and that he's been told he has no talent. The man explains he's never seen such magic before and says the guy is a mage, and it's truly incredible. The title tells us that during the 15 years that the hero stood still, his magical power grew to 99.99. In the center is a hand holding a card with the inscription that magic is the difference. In a sense, it is the ability to control a part of the world, forcing it to obey your will, and it is a gift that only a few with innate talent possess. It is reported that among the entire population only 10% are chosen, and, of course, only 10% of them. The existence of a hierarchy of inequality called a pyramid is described. The voiceover states that the talented 10% undergo rigorous training, then explains that, for example, priests acquire sacred magic for healing wounds at the end of their training. The man explains that even then, most people can only achieve partial relief, and true, complete recovery is something they will never achieve except for those at the very top of the inequality pyramid. The girl says she's never seen such healing magic before and asks if it's. The girl says he saved her, identifies himself as Diz, and greets Royle. Royle tries to pronounce her name and agrees with her. Royle explains that the grandis vita spiritum, great breath of life, is not a true spell and does not exist. Royle explains that he can say this with confidence because he made it up, and confirms his words in other words. Royle explains that this is just part of the lore he created, and that it's one of the settings that has emerged from 15 years of his fantasies. The girl approaches Royle and offers to heal the scratch he got when he tripped earlier. Royle says that during the entrance test, the boy says he wasn't one of those with 100% talent. The man asks Royle if he's also heading to Melky. He says he chose this path and the girl says she knew it. Then the girl offers to go together. The guy says he can't believe it happened. The girl says he's being careless and asks if that's true. Royle explains that he's tall and doesn't speak well, so he's not very good at it. The girl laughs and says that's not true at all. She's good at reading people. Royle says he still doesn't know why he can use the mage. The image does not contain speech bubbles or text. There are no characters depicted, and it shows a forest with trees and sky. The girl reports that she has been expelled from the ranks of the sacred girls. Royle says he trained in the holy city but couldn't master sacred magic no matter how many years passed, and was eventually expelled. The girl says she tore her dress right in front of her boss and left in anger, then, while running, tripped and injured herself. The guy says he doesn't know what to say to the girl and tries to come up with something comforting, like good things are bound to happen. He starts saying good things are bound to happen. The girl interrupts him and says she's going to become an adventurer and is heading to Melky. The woman says she's much more confident in this and believes she's better suited to being an adventurer, and the man says it took him a long time to figure that out. The woman explains that Royle wanted to ask if he could use detection magic, and calls out loudly for Royle. The man remains silent. The guy says that it is an ancient dragon that can destroy an entire nation on its own and expresses disbelief, saying that such a thing cannot be. Royle states that it is a force capable of destroying a nation. The man says the country is finished and asks if that's true. Royle responds by asking if it's stronger. Royle then casts the spell Omnis Pierce All Things. The girl notices the magic bullets and asks if they belong to. The third man reports a creaking sound. The second man reports a squealing sound. A man screams as he attacks with a club. A man, a woman, and a girl report that the situation is dire. A man with a sword stands before three enormous silhouettes that emerge from the smoke. The man with the sword says he can't let them pass, and the man with the spear and the man with the gun remain silent. The girl remains silent, expressing silent surprise. The woman says it's serious. The man, the girl, and Royle stand by the carriage and look at the smoke. The guy asks if everyone is okay and if they're injured. The girl replies that no one is hurt and, more importantly, that everything is fine. The girl says he did it, the man confirms it. The girl says she knew it was amazing and asks if the bullets are homing. She also says Royle is incredibly strong. Royle remains silent. Royle says that this is indeed true and that he has begun to use the magic he imagined. The woman explains that it's the healing magic Grandis Vita, the great breath of life. The man explains that it's the detection magic, the invisible hand covering the world. The boy explains that it's the offensive magic omnis chaos, penetrating all things. He says it's literally like. Royle says he shouldn't have had any talent or ability, but he still. The guy in armor says he doesn't understand why, and the girl expresses her confusion with a question mark. Royle says thank you. The man expresses surprise. The man thanks her for saving him this time and asks how they can repay him, but the girl replies no. The woman says she wants to express her gratitude too. Flora Dean says she is the daughter of Count Dean, who rules this territory, and thanks her for saving their lives today. The man says he doesn't know what to say and expresses embarrassment. Flora Dean thanks him again. The man remains silent. The guy says it's a situation where nothing will move unless he says something, and he tries to start a conversation. At that moment, Royle has a revelation, realizing that the magic in his imagination is something his real self can now use, and in his imagination, his communication. The girl says all she needs is to realize she can do it. The man says he should respond like a gentleman, calmly and gracefully, and decides to give it a try. He says he's glad to see no one was hurt and gives his name, noting the man's politeness. The girl says she can't believe it happened. The girl explains it's impossible. Royle declares that he will protect the lady with his life and orders her to run, simultaneously threatening to kill the boy and asking if he is a companion of the High Orcs. The girl asks her to stop. Royle says stop with perfect pronunciation. The woman apologizes for her rudeness and explains that it was this man's magic that saved everyone here, but apologizes for being too nervous to speak properly. She says she's glad to see everyone safe, addressing Lady Flora and everyone present, and puts that above all else. The guy says he can't say exactly what happened, but something did. The girl says she can't believe it happened. The girl apologizes for her rude behavior and asks him to stand up. The woman says that as a noblewoman she wants to repay the kindness and invites them both to come to their estate in Melki. The man accepts the invitation. The image shows a two-horse carriage with a driver seated behind it. A road surrounded by a wooden fence and mountains are visible in the background. There are no text or speech bubbles on the scene. The guy says he understands. The guy reports that his communication skills are still hopeless. Royle says it's all about communication skills. He says, well, come to think of it. The girl says they have dessert at the manor that she wants Dischon to try. The girl with long hair says she's happy too. The girl with a braid says she's very happy too. He asks if Florachan is happy too. Royle reports that despite how awkward he is in communication, she talks to him very calmly. The girl reports that she instantly defused the situation that he had ruined. The girl says she just met a nobleman's daughter and chats casually with her, as if they were old friends. The man says she's connected to the nobleman's daughter, as if they've known each other for a long time. The girl says that this is really true. The girl says she's the embodiment of communication skills and an ancient dragon of these skills named Diz. The man asks if she's an ancient dragon of communication skills. The man says they have arrived and the woman calls for them to go. The woman invites them in, the man thanks Flora, and the girl asks Royle if he's coming alone. Royle, surprised, repeats the question about being alone. The man says he forgot to ask earlier and wonders how he'll learn to speak normally if he's not as good as Diz. The woman explains that she's traveling alone and calls it a solo party, noting that the guy seems quite experienced. The guy replies that he's just starting out in this city to become an adventurer. The girl says that with her outfit and powerful magic, she thought otherwise, and wonders if that's really true. The armored man says they're in the same boat then. The girl looks ahead thoughtfully. The guy says, then how about this? The girl suggests forming a party with him. The guy says the word party. The man says tada and invites them to eat as much as they want. The woman explains that Royle and Diz are the saviors of their daughter's life, and therefore, their own lives. Royle looks ahead silently. The image shows a girl sitting on a brick wall, smiling. Next to her, it says that during the 15 years he was on duty, his magical power increased to 9,999,999. The Steam says that, Steam and asks, are you? The woman says they're forming a party to complete quests, adventures, and earn money, and asks him what he thinks about it. The man remains silent. The woman says it's sudden and suggests he think about it if he wants. The girl says the reward can wait, and if Royle ever gets into trouble, he should contact them. Royle asks if he's sure the gold coins are enough, and if there's anything else they can do. The girl says that's more than enough of a reward. Royle. A man is lying on a bed. A man is standing by the door and saying he can't sleep. Royle says he's definitely going to have a party together. He says that even though they've only just met, he already realizes that Diz is someone he respects, and an invitation from her is more than he could have hoped for. He also wonders if someone as amazing as she could really be okay with someone like him. The guy says he's so mad he doesn't know what he's thinking. Royle informs that Diz invited him and he should answer with confidence. The woman says good morning to Diz, and he responds hesitantly. The man on the bottom left winces, and the one on the right looks surprised. A guy invites a girl to form a match with him. The girl greets Flora and says she's looking forward to it. The girl wishes the guy a good morning and tells him the bed was so soft she slept well. The guy says he understands. Royle becomes aware of his weight and calls. The woman announces that it's time for them to leave. The girl thanks them and asks Diz-chan and Royle to come visit again. Royle replies that he thanks her for everything too. The girl says goodbye and wishes to see them again. The woman waves and says, "See you later." The guy says he can't understand why the sky looks so beautiful. In the top right, a man announces that he somehow arrived in a new city. In the top left, a girl explains that he has found a companion. Royle reports that for 15 years. The man reports that his life was stagnant from his late teens to his early 20s, but is now finally starting to move again. Royle makes a questioning sound. The girl says she is addressing Royle. The girl asks what to do next, and he remains silent and repeats the word, next. Royle explains that the guild has already decided that adventurers must register with the guild before delving into dungeons. The man confirms this is true and suggests moving on to the next point. The girl explains that the guild is responsible for providing for the base and suggests going to a real estate agency. Asking. The guy asks what a base is. The girl says they'll go to the guild, of course, but she thinks they need to do this first. The man smiles. The woman says they're planning to stay in Melky for a while and wants to find a place to stay first, as she's had a lot of trouble with inns before coming here. The man says the accommodations are cheaper than inns and agrees. The woman explains that disappearance is a problem. Royle reports that this town has a museum where you can learn a lot about its past. He explains that it displays ancient artifacts and documents that tell the story of the local people. The sign states the name of the real estate agency Mizashibiniadrip. The man reports that today, as always, he is thriving. The man says he is thriving. The man says he has 20 years of experience in real estate and his motto is to provide good properties to good clients. The man screams for an apology. A woman and a man talk about a cursed property and want to know more about it. The man says he'll bring tea and the property's papers. The man with the mustache says he knows the two are ideal clients because he's been scamming customers for 20 years and can easily spot a naive girl with unfounded beliefs. The man explains that the rent is usually 300,000 yen per month, but if you're willing to exorcise the ghost, you can rent it for 150,000 yen, adding that he wouldn't rent the place even for 100,000 yen. He explains that they put a sign on the door that says, abandoned property, to attract people. The man says that even if the house is haunted, a mansion of this size for 150,000 yen is a bargain and asks her to agree. Royle remains silent and asks what that means. He says he knows because he's been evaluating clients for 20 years. He explains that at that moment, right before his eyes, he realized that this man truly intended to kill him, and that there was real death. The man remains silent, and he looks at him. The girl explains that when she touches her right ear, Royle should say, "What?" to the realtor and apply a little pressure. The girl explains that in the clergy world where she came from, everyone did this for a smile, and it's just a simple negotiating tactic since the realtor. The girl says that exorcising a ghost costs about 2 million yen and 150,000 yen a month, and the man says he can't believe it. The man says Royle has been hunting marks for 20 years and offers 100,000 yen a month, warning Zambi not to let Royle defeat him. Royle says the word power, and Zambi makes a irk sound. The girl remains silent and thinks, The man lets out a frightened cry. The girl says that 50,000 yen a month seems reasonable to her. The man with the mustache says 80,000 yen a month. The guy says that's too expensive. The man with the brush says 60,000 yen a month. The guy again says that's too expensive. The man says 50,000 yen a month is acceptable. The man with the mustache cries, The guy. The guy says he might have overdone it, and the girl explains that it was a bit harsh, but considering the state of the property, 50,000 yen a month is a fair price. The girl explains that a high-ranking ghost is a being so powerful that a normal cleric wouldn't be able to deal with it. Negative emotions left behind after the death of people or animals transform them into low-level ghosts, monsters. They cause chills, nausea, and depression in those around them, manifesting as persistent regret, anger, or sadness. It is reported that hundreds and thousands of them are combined into one whole, but a high-level ghost appears. It is extremely powerful and displays clear hostility toward anyone who intrudes on its territory. Simply put, it is a very dangerous monster. The guy says it's called a haunted mansion. The girl explains that's exactly what they call it. Royle says it's an isolated house on the outskirts of town and that it's a very suitable location. The girl asks him what he thinks. He replies yes and asks what exactly. The girl says that, in her opinion, there are several types of ghosts and this one can be quite dangerous. The girl says maybe the 30,000 yen rent was worth it after all. Royle says she's resilient, then expresses irritation. The girl asks him what he thinks and says that even a high-ranking priest can hardly resist this ghost. He remains silent and repeats about a high-ranking priest. The man addresses Royle, calling him Your Excellency. Royle reacts with surprise and answers, yes. The girl, breathes heavily and calls Royle by name. The boy says they can't defeat this ghost on their own and addresses the girl, calling her Excellency. The girl asks her to lend them her power and repeats her address to Excellency. The boy remains silent. The girl says she is addressing His Highness. The girl asks him if he wants to form a party with her and invites him to join her party. Royle says he can't understand why this is happening and says he doesn't know what to do. Royle then explains that he wants to sort out his feelings and figure out what's important to him. The guy says yes, that's correct, and confirms that he is Raybell. The girl asks if he is Raybell and calls him by his first name. The guy replies that yes, that is correct, and the girl addresses him as His Excellency without saying a word. Raybell reveals that she really is Raybell. Royle says yes, she is, and makes it clear that he feels a sense of guilt towards Diz, explaining that even if it's just an illusion, he feels it. Royle speaks of divine thunder in the age of the gods, which resounds and roars across heaven and earth. He says that his name is Malamium and he is the one who eradicates evil. The man announces that he is here. The woman reports that everything is as expected, and it's surprising, or rather, surprising. The man and woman look at a large building from which a loud scream is emanating. The woman explains that it's the divine thunder of ancient times, echoing across heaven and earth, and this is an abbreviated incantation. The man. A woman talks about shortened singing, and a man reports the same thing. It is reported that there is a technique that compresses the magical power embedded in each part of a spell or incantation and activates it instantly. The man reports that only those who are able to use it are at the top of the hierarchy of magicians, making up the top few percent. Royle says he's going to start an adventurer's life in this city, and that everything will probably be fine. The girl asks who exactly he is and says that everything will probably be fine. Royle confirms that everything will probably be fine. The guy says he's confident and thinks everything should be fine. The girl laughs and says that it is. The man reports that he slapped something. The girl thanks him and says that Royle is a really good person. Royle remains silent. The voice says he is super happy. The image shows a house. The man says that no one has lived in this house for many years, and the girl explains that a family once lived here, but suddenly disappeared. The girl says it's definitely worth cleaning and expresses admiration. The guy turns to her, saying, "Today," and the girl immediately says she knows. The guy says they just need to clean up around the dining area and sleeping area, and then have a housewarming party, adding that Dis said so. The girl explains that they've talked about everything, including what tasks and adventures they should take on. The guy says of course he agreed, and they, against the backdrop of the house and the mountain, the sounds of cicadas chirping can be heard, giving way to the silence of the night under the moonlight. Royle says he feels discomfort and then makes a noise that expresses tension. The guy says he slept well and sighs. Then he explains that yesterday was fun and eventful, his first drinking party. The man says he can come in and asks if anyone is home. Royle says it might be a visitor and he's going to answer. He asks if Diz is awake and suggests it might be a neighbor or a really nice girl. The guy says it's just a pipe dream. He suddenly gets nervous for some reason. Then he says yes and The girl says that she is a sorceress and asks not to be afraid. The man is silent and then says wow. The girl says she's pleased to meet you and apologizes for her sudden appearance, explaining that she has a question. She then reports that there was strong energy in the area and asks if a ghost is haunting the place. The woman says she happened to be passing by yesterday and felt a powerful magical energy. Royle confirms this and says yes. The woman explains it was banishing magic and asks if he still lives here, implying he is that same person. Royle answers affirmatively. The girl says she doesn't know. The man remains silent. The guy says the magic clearly wasn't holy, but that such a level of power was achieved with simple exorcism magic, and asks what it is. The girl says she has a request and asks if it would be acceptable. The guy replies that yes, it would be acceptable and mentions this incident. The guy says the man is a little scary and asks if anyone is there. The girl says it's weird and asks what happened. The girl apologizes, says that the interlocutor is there, and asks if they can talk a little. The guy says the girl is very ugly and asks what's wrong with her. The girl reports that over the 15 years she has been on guard, her magical power has grown to 9,999. Birds make sounds like chung-chung. Royle says that the next day he told Diz about what happened yesterday, and the girl says that's exactly what happened yesterday and wants to meet that girl next time. Royle asks if that's all he has to say, to which the girl answers affirmatively. Royle agrees, and the girl notes that he, as expected, he says they'll start by going shopping. The girl asks if they're really going shopping. The man asks if they're going to the dungeon. The girl explains that they need a lot of things before they can go to the dungeon. The girl says that she looks like this and adds more. The man says that with his sister's thin attire, his armor protection is practically non-existent. He reveals that he has no knowledge whatsoever of being an adventurer and explains that, as Dis said, he needs to get his gear in order first. A sword and a staff are fixed to the wall. The image contains no text or speech. It shows a room with numerous weapons and tools scattered across the walls and tables. The girl says that should do the trick and agrees. She explains that the next item needed is a magic bag. The man asks what a magic bag is. The girl explains that it's an essential item for travelers, allowing them to easily store even large items, and adds that they can only be purchased in stores. The woman says it's a magical bag that holds a lot of things without feeling heavy, and the man says it's amazing. The woman says she's always wanted a bag like this and lists what she'll take with her. The man also lists what he'll take. Royle says the supplies keep piling up and wonders if he's done anything yet. Another man says they're now heading to the guild to register as adventurers. The guy with the glass explains that the tavern is always packed and is famous for its atmosphere, and the man with the pitcher agrees, saying it's a great place to have a good time. The man with long hair explains that after a hard day, it's the best place to relax, and the man standing with short hair adds, the guy says it's an adventurer's guild. The man explains that everyone's stares make him feel intimidated and says he should at least wear a helmet. Mocha greets them and says she's the receptionist, explains that this is a branch of Melky's Adventurers Guild, and asks how she can help them today. The woman says she and Royle want to register as adventurers and register their party. The woman asks Royle to remove his helmet. Royle apologizes and says he'll take it off right away. Royle says he sighs. The guy asks if something bad happened. The girl is silent, then expresses bewilderment. The girl refuses, saying no, and Royle says that he will begin the registration process right now. First, it is reported that Mocha explained the adventurer ranks, tasks, and various other details. Then it is said that Royle and Dis finally officially joined the adventurer ranks. A girl asks what their group will be called. A man in armor and a girl stand nearby. The girl says it symbolizes their new start in life called Altera Vita. The man stands silently nearby. The guy reveals that it's a name they both came up with last night and explains that they were both fired from their jobs. The guy says it felt like a new beginning. The girl says it's a great name. The man tells them their adventure tokens are here and warns that if they get lost, they'll have to pay a fine. The girl explains that the tokens are for reissuance, so they need to be careful. Royle explains that his name is Royle. The man and the girl communicate. The guy says he thought he would be a goalkeeper all his life and says he never imagined he would take a different path. The guy says she's waving at him. The girl explains she's trying to calm his nerves and says she's very kind. Royle says it's finally time for a dungeon. The boy reports that Miguel seems to have had bad luck this time. The man explains that even a powerful demon god can't achieve good luck here and wishes Miguel better luck next time. The man looks at her with tension and then smiles, talking to the girl. Royle says he can't let himself die because he has a dream he wants to fulfill. The man says he'll wait for Royle to return. He says he can't afford to lose. The man with the horn says the large monster looks very dangerous. Another man says he's had no luck this time. The man with the horn asks if he should call it off. The man at the table explains that no one will judge him for running from the creature. The woman says she can't really do it. The man says he has no choice and must do it. A man asks a guy and a girl if they have registered. A man in armor asks if he needs help. Miguel says he has business for the two of them and asks for a moment of his time. The man remains silent. Miguel explains that he has worn leather armor and a well-maintained longsword at his belt. The guy reports that he's taller than him and looks strong, as well as very large. The guy explains that he does indeed give off the aura of an experienced adventurer. But the guy asks him what he wants from them and if they've offended him, saying he should say something. The girl allows the guy to speak. Royle is surprised. The man says fine and orders her to follow him. The man announces that the fight will be held according to tournament rules and explains that the winner will advance to the next stage. He explains that both participants must perform at their best and maintain fairness in the fight. He says that spectators are welcome to watch the fight and support their favorites. The guy on the right explains that this is a typical initiation for newbies. The girl in the middle explains that newbies are unlucky if Miguel works with them. The man explains that according to guild rules, newcomers must fight experienced adventurers. It's tradition. The girl starts to speak, but remains silent. The man explains that this is. Royle says he'll do something, and the girl reacts with surprise. The armored man says you can't rely on that all the time, then asks Royle's name and says he's the one. Royle says he needs to use his weight somehow. The man reacts with surprise. The referee signals the start of the fight. The man is silent. The guy says he has prepared a weapon, but doubts he can handle a spear he has hardly used before. The guy reports that if he uses Omnis Chaos, the weapon that destroyed the tall orc, Miguel will likely be blown to pieces. Royle says so. The man says that Baylor of the Evil Eye rests here. The girl, addressing her older brother, says there's a very ominous atmosphere here. Royle confirms this. He says he will block all enemy attacks and magic and expects help in the attack. The girl asks her older brother not to die and says that when they return, he wants to say something. He replies that he doesn't think he'll die so easily. The girl makes a gesture calling for silence. The guy says no and asks not to say anything more. The girl agrees. The man and girl notice something around them. The monster says he's finally revealed himself, but at the same time, the man and girl listen. Royle says that no matter what happens, he will protect Alice and summon the strongest protective barrier he can. The knight casts a spell of absolute inviolability and isolation. A man reports that the atmosphere has changed. Another man asks what happened, if anyone is scared, and a woman demands they hurry. The man says it's easy for others to say when it's not their problem, and states he has no choice but to go. The man then yells and strikes, ordering them to accept it. The guy says it's coming. Royle tells him whether his Omnino Nomorist is actually activated. Absolute immunity, separation of light, isolated space. And if not, he's dead. The man explains that his magic has so far worked on orcs and wraiths, monsters like them. He explains that he doubts it will work against a seasoned adventurer like Miguel. The man screams in pain. 3 men and a woman are silent, watching from above. The man with the spear is silent, standing below. The armored man with the spear holds his hand on his chest and remains silent. The man says he can't fight anymore and asks to be allowed to die. Then the man says he's tired and doesn't want to live anymore. The boy says he is saved and expresses gratitude. Royle reports that the gatekeeper's greatest enemy is mosquitoes. He explains that with his full-plate armor, he is completely helpless because once the enemies get inside they can do whatever they want, and he finds himself completely overwhelmed by one-sided torment. Royle says he gritted his teeth and endured the itch, which seemed more terrifying to him than any monster. He says that one day they suddenly stopped attacking him, and then he just thought he was lucky. Royle reports that, in retrospect, he must have subconsciously activated an absolute, impenetrable, isolated space. The man says that in this world there is only one way to survive, to kill. A man reports that a spell designed solely to repel mosquitoes has worked and expresses joy. The man calls out to Royle. The girl says she can't let him go, and the armored man replies that he's not going to give up. The girl says Royle did it. Royle is surprised and tries to pronounce the girl's name. The girl says Royle got a hug from Diz and thanks the mosquitoes that day. The guy says he's incredible and immediately knocks Miguel down. The man asks for a minute. The man says he believes his interlocutor to be a renowned knight. He then explains that he is Munioshi, a wandering seeker of power. A man says he's Munioshi. A man explains he's Munioshi. A man explains who Munioshi is. A man asks who Munioshi is. A man says he can't fight but he can walk. A man explains he can't walk, but he can fight. A man explains he can both fight and walk. Royle reports that something like this has happened again, and another strong guy appears who asks to give him a duel. The boy says he's not that great. The man says it's hard to show such strength and remain humble. The man explains that fighting again is a hassle. The man says even that won't shake the boy. The boy says he never saw it coming. The image shows a rapid movement of a leg accompanied by the sounds of footsteps. The knight tells them to get ready, and the man with the spear says he will begin. The man says he's not prepared. Royle says he's asking for preparation, but it's too sudden. The man makes a noise that expresses confusion. The knight says the spear is just in the way and unnecessary. The man explains that he said it incorrectly because he stuttered too much, which is bad, since he meant to say that the spear is in the way and shouldn't be used. The man laughs and says that the knight sounds very confident. Royle says he is not like anyone the interlocutor has encountered before. The knight reports that the two are no different from each other. He says that both are much stronger than him, so he cannot tell the difference, and adds that this is exactly what he said, but it did not get through. The man says he's been underestimated and offers to strike back, asking if the other man will do it. The man warns that there will be no more words and prepares to attack, but the other man says he didn't mean to. The girl says the name of her move and delivers a powerful punch to the man's face, which sends him flying backwards. The knight expresses surprise. A cloud of smoke explodes. The man reports that the smoke is gradually dissipating. The knight says he is unsure and makes sounds of doubt, and the girl responds with a question. The girl says that she didn't think he would listen to reason and explains that she decided it would be faster this way. The girl says wait and then exclaims what? The guy says he heard she was confident, but the girl says she's not going to give up and will fight to the end, and that she has the strength and determination to win. The guy says he didn't think she'd be that strong and yells that his ribs hurt. The girl says with a questioning expression. Royle says that at least Diz is okay. And the girl says that nothing serious happened, but Royle thinks he shouldn't make her angry. The next shots show a table set with food and a building. The girl says it was fun, the guy says it was really fun, the man in armor says it was fun, and the girl with horns says it was fun. After the battle, Royle reports that Miguel and the others threw a welcoming party for them. Miguel explains that he and Diz were forced to drink endlessly. Royle explains that Miguel explained the purpose of the event. The boy says that many new adventurers have nothing but useless self-confidence. The girl explains that this is why many people waste their lives needlessly. Royle explains that to prevent this, they need to be humbled at least once, and then reports that it seems that was unnecessary. The man with the horn laughs and puts his hand on the other's shoulder, and later that man lies drunk on the floor. The guy thinks that everyone has welcomed them so kindly and that maybe he can get by here. The girl speaks mind. The girl apologizes to Royle for barging in yesterday and asks if he remembers her. Royle is surprised and asks who she is. The girl takes off her hat and says that if that's true, then Royle, in a panic, remembers something from that time. The girl apologizes for possibly scaring the man and says she shouldn't have knocked on the door so much. The man says everything is fine and not to worry about it, then reflects that she's not as scary as he thought. The guy apologizes and asks if what happened earlier was magic. The guy says she noticed it and the girl says she has a favor to ask. A girl approaches a guy and tells him to make her his student. The guy says he doesn't understand. The girl asks to be taken as a student. The man in armor says in surprise, "What?" The girl says that 15 years have passed while he stood guard, and during this time his magical power has grown to 9,999. The girl says that this is the strongest power. Royle says that there was a test of strength in the guild earlier and everyone around them thinks that he blocked Miguel's attack with his armor. The guy says it was magic and asks if she's a student. The girl explains that it is. The boy wonders if what he's using is actually magic and reflects on how it's making him uneasy. The man says that cleansing the ghost yesterday was his magic and says that this ghost should not have been banished so easily. The girl reports that she accidentally witnessed the scene. The girl says so, The man asks, "I beg." The girl asks to be taken as an apprentice. Royle steps back in surprise. He explains that he just used it by accident and it worked, but he can't teach it to others. He then says he has to give it up so as not to offend anyone. The girl says it's too early. The girl makes a sound expressing effort or tension. Royle remains silent, holding his mug and blinking. The woman says she will improve herself. He says, "Ah," and then pauses, asking if she misunderstood something, repeating the word improve. The girl says that she will never give up and will definitely achieve recognition as a student. Royle reports that the wind is blowing outside. The guy says he wanted to say that it was too early for him to take on an apprentice, but he doubts he expressed it correctly. A building with a coat of arms and windows is depicted against the night sky, with a closed door shown nearby. The man says there's nothing in this world that money can't buy, and explains that if you have money, you can get anything. The girl says it sounds like a fairy tale and says she wants to know if it's really true. The man explains that money is power, and if a person has it. The man asks what the newcomers were like today, asking how they performed as adventurers. The girl says he's handsome, but the man corrects her, saying she's specifically interested in their abilities. The man reports that the handsome knight, Mr. Royle, easily defeated Mr. Miguel, to which the girl happily confirms. The man says the Sakura Knights are affiliated with the church. The man explains that it's a church branch. The man says they should monitor the situation for now and says they can leave, but they should report if anything happens. The man explains he's apologizing. The girl says she'll keep a close eye on things. The guy says he hopes no trouble happens. A large house is depicted against the backdrop of the night sky with a crescent moon. The woman reports that in the evening when she came home, she told us about what happened, and then said that it was bad. The guy says something is wrong and asks what happened, then repeats the question, "What?" The man responds with questions about what and how. The girl asks Royle what he thinks of the girl. Royle says he's unsure and pauses. Royle then explains that she's probably a newbie with strong delusions, and says she misunderstood something and quickly left. He says that he is a newbie with strong delusions, and the girl explains that she looked like a magician, but the girl says she's a first-class adventurer and probably the best sorceress in this city. The man tells her first. The girl says thoughtfully, The guy asks if she is really that amazing. The girl answers in the affirmative and says that she is a famous person who often appears in a newspaper for adventurers, and that she learned about her from there. The man informs her that her magical power is top-notch for an adventurer and that she has the skills of a court mage. He explains that every piece of her equipment is top-notch and says that this girl is a true mage. The guy says he's surprised. The girl explains that he's been guarding the gate this whole time, so it's understandable he didn't know. The guy confirms this. The girl asks the man why he thinks she looks so upset. The man replies with a question. Royle says to think about the fact that someone with the skills of a court magician bowed to them in respect and asked to become an apprentice. The girl asks what he said to that. The man says, Royle says he didn't think he had the skills to become an apprentice and asks if it's too early. The girl replies that it's still too early. The man expresses surprise. The girl remains silent, and the man says he didn't realize what he did. The girl laughs. The girl says Royle is really funny and the best. Royle replies that she is the best. The girl says she doesn't seem like a bad person. The man says they should have a proper conversation next time. The girl explains he hasn't spoken to anyone in 15 years. The girl says that they will practice communication without rushing and that she will become his partner. Royle says thank you and the girl agrees. Then Royle says it's time to get started. First came the morning, and then came the long-awaited day of the first expedition into the dungeon. The girl asks if he's still worried about what happened yesterday and says it's his first dungeon trip today, so he'll be missing out if he doesn't enjoy it. Royle agrees and says she's right. The man says there are a lot of people in this area, and it's always noisy. The man explains that everyone comes here to find out the latest news and events. The man explains that important information and announcements can be found on the bulletin board. The man says that new posts are posted every day, and people read them carefully. The man says that thanks to this. The guy says, The girl says, it's really crowded in the mornings. A group of people are standing in a room, one of them breathing heavily. The man says that they need to come a little earlier tomorrow. A young man reports that a large group of tall orcs has appeared in the eastern forest, causing panic. The man and woman react with surprise. The man says now is not the time for dungeons, and the woman agrees. The top right text explains that a herd stampede is a critical event where a group of monsters rushes toward the city. The armored man explains that being a guard at Sakuran's northern gate meant preparing for such a stampede from the forest north of the city. But for 15 years, it hadn't happened. Royle reports that there is a school in this city where warriors are trained, and explains that only those who have passed the selection are admitted there. The guy says there's only one person in town who can help, and that's him. He explains he can't help because he doesn't have time and suggests asking someone else. The man says the other person won't help because he's too busy. The girl says they can't wait and need to act now. Royle says he's silent. The girl with the ears explains she has a list and is willing to show it. The man in armor says he can't believe what's happening. The girl says it's genuinely exciting and explains that panic like this only happens once every few decades. So it's not surprising. Royle says yes. The man says he's having his first mist period, and the woman says it's her first time, too. Then the door opens abruptly. The man puts his hands on the floor and begins moving quickly. A man shouts to the group that he has an emergency request. A man tells the group that he has an emergency request. The guy reports that a large group of orcs has appeared in the eastern forest, and their number is about 60. The boy reports that there are about 60 of them, and the man is surprised by such a number. Royle explains that a tall orc strength is incomparable to a regular orc, and that experienced B-rank adventurers can barely handle one one-on-one. He also explains that if even one tall orc appears in a small village, then he reports that there are 60 of them, and if this march is allowed, the city will surely The guy says to destroy. The man, girl, and woman look at him silently. Royle says that even if the orcs are strong, they are just tall orcs and nothing compared to dragons or ghosts. He then declares that they won't let this happen and will defend their city themselves. Royle explains that if they join forces, they will surely defeat their enemies. The man announces that the forest is half a day's journey away and orders everyone to get ready and head there immediately. A man with a raised hand shouts that the orcs are cursed and must be destroyed, and that they will protect this city, calling for everyone to go. A bearded man and a woman shout to everyone. The guy says everyone's gone and asks what they should do now. A man and a woman stand at the entrance to the building. The guy explains that they, having just become adventurers, weren't the target of the emergency call, and besides they recently defeated a tall orc, so it's not so appealing. He explains that he wants to go to the dungeon. The girl laughs and says she appreciates Royle's honesty in this situation. Royle apologizes and denies anything. The girl explains they can't go into the dungeon until this is over, to which Royle agrees. The girl suggests going to the eastern forest, and Royle agrees. The girl asks him to show her cool side and says that then they can go. The man agrees a little sheepishly. The man and the girl shake hands. The girl asks what happened. The man asks to wait a minute. The guy reports that there are rumors of about 60 tall orcs here and wants more precise information. He explains that this could be because they helped with Flora's carriage. The man tells Diz to back off a bit, to which Diz agrees. The man begins to draw a magic circle, calling it Nevada. The upper right panel depicts a city surrounded by rings of light radiating through the forest. The lower left panel depicts two men looking forward. The lower right panel shows two glowing orbs moving through the forest. The girl remains silent, expressing surprise. The girl asks Royle if what he just did was real. Royle replies that yes, it's what he used during the incident with Flora. He says the herd of tall orcs heading into the city numbers 62, which is almost the same as the number the guildmaster reported. He confirms it worked. The guy reports that something is happening to Royle. Royle explains what, but the man reports that behind the herd of 62 orcs there is another herd of 205 tall orcs. And if the main force is the 205 tall orcs, then the 62 could have been a decoy earlier. The guildmaster reported that he had come out expecting about 60 tall orcs and noted that they seemed quite desperate. He explained that he considered this number to be the limit the guild could handle. If after they barely managed to defeat a group of tall orcs, this number appears 3 times, then the man reports that the guild squad that just left will almost certainly be destroyed. The girl speaks to Royle. He warns Diz to stay away and slows his hand movement, while Royle remains silent and looks tense. The girl says that's how everyone will die. The man with the horn on his forehead laughs and agrees. The guy in armor remains silent. The man with dreadlocks says that's impossible. Royle says he doesn't want to lose everyone in the new place he's found. He then casts the Omnis Causes spell to pierce everything. The girl turns to Royle and says she wants to tell him something. A man says it's all over, and another man responds with surprise. The guy says he's glad the activation was successful. Then he says he hopes everyone is safe. The top right text states that, with the help of an invisible force, 62 orcs were completely destroyed by Royle. The girl asks if it's really over and says Royle is amazing, explaining that it happened just like with Flora. Royle confirms that it is indeed so. The girl asks if they should report this, and the guy replies no. The girl explains that even if they say something, they won't be believed. The guild is busy right now, so the others won't be able to help either. The man apologizes to them. The girl apologizes for disturbing and says she really wants to become a student. The man and girl on the right are surprised. The guy asks if this is the girl named Sandy-chan they were talking about, and the girl confirms. The girl says she's Diz, is in Royle's group, and asks for his attention. The man tells Royle to have a proper conversation with her in private. The girl explains that this is good communication practice. The man asks why. The girl in the sorcerer's hat shudders. The girl says it was love at first sight. Royle says he can't believe it and asks if that means anything. Then he says no, wait. The guy says he's studied this in books and shouldn't misunderstand. He explains that the phrase "you're easy to talk to" means "you're not important to me," and "you're a good person" means "I don't perceive you as a man." The woman explains that the question "Are you free this weekend?" is actually a request to cover a shift, and the phrase "I have a date with a guy" is the true meaning of a refusal. Royle explains that he almost made a mistake and didn't understand the magic. Otherwise he would have suffered a strong emotional blow, and now he understands it. The man. The girl says that the owner destroyed the crush and it was incredible, and also asks if it was ultimate magic. The guy tells mate magic. Royle says TL. He informs them that the enemy is strong and that he will destroy it with his supreme magic. Asking for time. The horned girl and the man say they will take it upon themselves. Then the horned girl and the man attack the monster. In the upper right, a man is fighting a large creature using magic. Royle shouts that now is the time for a powerful spell. He then casts a powerful magic spell. In the lower right, a girl with bunny ears says that everything went as expected, and a boy addresses Royle, calling him. The guy says that high magic is really cool and explains that he heard the girl is elite, but Sandy is still a child and she probably admires cool techniques like high magic. The girl with the staff says she understands it a little. The man turns to her. The man says he was the chief court mage's best student and asks if it's truly impossible. The man is shocked that the girl would change her mentor from someone so outstanding. The man says that's not true and that the other man is better. The man explains that he can't lie, but he doesn't know what to do. The girl says the guy's smile means it's not her problem. Royle says he doesn't understand why he can use magic. The girl is surprised. The girl says it's original magic and it's truly amazing. Royle thinks the girl is even more interested now, and that's why he can't teach her. The woman asks to be accepted as a student and begs for it. The man tells her to raise her head, while he notes her determination. The girl says "Diz." The girl says she's all for it and thinks it sounds funny. Royle says it's just because it's interesting. He then says she doesn't seem like a bad child, so it's okay, and finishes with okay. The girl thanks the master, and the man agrees. The girl informs him that now that Sandy-chan has joined, it's time to return to base. The man announces that it is time to begin. The girl says that Royle's mana needs to be measured. The girl says she'll go first. The woman says the master stats are probably amazing. The man thinks about mana. The woman says she only had her mana measured once, when she joined the knightly order. The man says he believes his mana was in the single digits back then. Royle reports that he can now use powerful magic and his mana pool should have increased. The girl says the number is 12. The man sits across from the girl at the table and listens. The girl says that a novice adventurer mage typically has between 50 and 100 points, but she has zero talent and doesn't understand why she was chosen as a candidate for sainthood. The man reacts to this with doubt. A woman asks Sandy how many points she has. Sandy reports that she has a little over 800 points. The man says that's impressive. The woman laughs. The man says that if Royle gets more than 1,000, he'll make history. Royle says yes and offers to measure him too. The man asks if that's true. The girl says something just happened. Royle asks if she's okay. The girl says she's perfectly fine, doesn't object, and suggests they just get going. The man asks for him to hurry, then remains silent, holding his finger to his mouth. Royle says it worked very quickly. The girl says she'll take a look now. The guy says the temperature is 9, then repeats 9.9 and 9.9.9.9. The woman reports that the device only displays 4 digits, meaning Royle's mana pool could be over 10,000, adding that she knew he was exceptional, but this exceeds expectations. The girl says it's as expected from the owner. Royle responds hesitantly. The man is surprised. Royle reveals that becoming a high-class court mage is impossible for him. He explains that he could be imprisoned and used as a test subject due to his anomalous powers, but he won't allow that to happen. The girl explains that Royle's magic is at a superhuman level, and says that what seems normal to him is completely outrageous to everyone else. Royle replies that he understands. The guy explains that you should never say things like, "I screwed something up" or something like that. The guy asks if his magic is strange and too weak, and if he thinks it's normal and if anyone can do it. The girl replies that she should never say that. Royle yells at her that she shouldn't say that. On the top right, the man says that all of these lines were cool lines he imagined, and on the top left, he says that these were the words he always dreamed of saying one day. The top right panel announces that it's evening at the Adventurers Guild. In the top left panel, a man in armor and a woman are looking at a notice board. The man and woman are discussing how, in the 15 years he was called a loser, his magic power has grown to 9,999. The guy announces that they're done. The girl apologizes for the wait. It is reported that two have just completed the process of joining Sandy's party, making Altera Vita now 3-member. The man asks how everything went and informs them that they still can't enter dungeons, but can now accept F-rank quests. The text explains that the panic has subsided, and all but a few of the strongest adventurers are now free to move around. A girl asks if Royle has found a good task, and Royle suggests considering one. The girl and another girl talk about a task to destroy a ghost. The girl says it's a good find and reports that the reward is high. Royle reads that other F-rank missions pay between 2,000 and 3,000, while this one costs 20,000. He says it's really scary, but he thought it might be something. The man asks if this is really normal. The girl says that if it's a master, there's no problem at all. The woman says. The man says to go talk to the staff and take the request. Royle reads the document. The girl says it's practice. The guy says okay. He says he's ready. The girl exclaims and calls him. The girl with the ears asks if something bad happened. Royle says he can't speak and his mouth won't move. The girl with the horns is surprised. The woman says he needs to show an application form and an adventurer's badge. He explains he's there to accept the application. He says he can't get the badge off his neck. The woman offers to help and asks him to sit down. He notices the administrator is very kind. The girl says it's starting. The guy says it's complicated. The girl explains it's not filmable. The girl says she's finally done it and will get down to the paperwork. She says that if anyone has any problems again, they can feel free to contact her for help. The woman asks how things went with Royle. Royle says he's accepted it. The woman says that's great, but notices that Royle doesn't look too happy. He says that Moka-san seems to be acting with selfish motives. The girl says that she thought so and confirms that it is true. The next scene explains that Moka-san behaves this way in order to later shift unpleasant requests onto them or use them for his own interests. Royle says he can't be fooled. The girl explains he misunderstood. The woman explains that Moka-san usually turns down other male adventurers. The man is surprised. The girl with the ears says it's obvious he'll be very successful, so women won't ignore him. The girl with the long hair says she believes she's genuinely interested in him and explains that he's strong and honest. Royle says that he doesn't think the other guy noticed, but he's actually very handsome, and the man is surprised and asks what handsome means. The guy says that if he didn't wear a helmet at work, it would be a real problem for him, and asks if that's why his former colleagues were jealous of him. The guy asks if he didn't know that, to which he replies that he didn't. Royle says he should have said this much earlier, about 15 years ago. He cries. The girl explains that she's not with him because of his looks and actually hates guys who rely only on their looks. The girl says that from now on, he'll probably never be alone again. The woman. He says that the past is the past and there is no point in looking back. Royle announces that he has finally become the adventurer he always wanted and says he should enjoy this new life as an adventurer to the fullest. The girl and the mage listen to him. The guy announces that it's time to exterminate the ghosts. The girl asks why the reward for this task is so high, and the guy explains that it's due to the specifics of the request. The girl says that ghosts can be defeated simply by dousing them with holy water, and that the high reward includes the cost of the holy water. The man explains that low-level ghosts don't actually harm people, but if they gather together, they merge into a high-level spirit that must be defeated first. He explains that holy water costs 1,000 GOL a bottle, and about 10 ghosts appear here per night. The man explains that after expenses, the actual reward is around 7,000 goals, but it's still a lucrative offer designed to help aspiring adventurers who need money. The woman explains that due to the eerie atmosphere, few people accept the quest. The girl says that since there's Royle, they'll make a big profit. The girl says she'll go meet the client, and the man thanks her. The man explains that they're the ones who took the order and warns that they've been quiet for the last few days. But they need to do a good job. The girl agrees, and the man greets her. The girl informs him that there are many monsters in the area and warns him to be careful. The armored man explains that he's here on a mission and intends to traverse the area. The girl explains that if he encounters monsters, it's best to run away rather than fight. The guy says they've arrived, and the woman replies that they were expected. The girl is surprised. The girl says something's wrong, and Royle confirms it. The man asks if it could be a high-level spirit. Royle talks about an invisible force that envelopes the world. A girl invites him to watch his magic, and he says it's real magic and really cool. He asks how it went, and the girl replies that she knew it was there and adds that, as expected, the master has no problems. The woman says there's nothing to worry about. Royle says the residual effects of the exorcism have destroyed the ghosts here, and the land and air have been purified, so ghosts won't appear for a while. The man asks if he remembers how they exorcised a ghost at the base. The man replies yes. The girl explains that they sort of took the job away from future ones. Royle says the residual effects of the exorcism have destroyed the ghosts here, and the land and air have been purified, so ghosts won't appear for a while. The man asks if he remembers how they exorcised a ghost at the base. The man replies yes. The girl explains that they sort of took the job away from future ones. Royle says the residual effects of the exorcism have destroyed the ghosts here, and the land and air have been purified, so ghosts won't appear for a while. The man asks if he remembers how they exorcised a ghost at the base. The man replies yes. The girl explains that they sort of took the job away from future ones. The girl says that he must return to work immediately and that he of all people should do it. The girl says he knows what it is. Royle, frightened, asks if that's really it. The guy says that if he remembers correctly, inquisitors are people sent by the Holy Church to ensure there's no misbehavior in various places, and he saw them several times when he was a gatekeeper. He also mentions that Diz was an inquisitor. The man exclaims, "That's an inquisitor." The guy with long hair is surprised to see an inspector in front of him and asks what he wants. The girl explains that she doesn't intend to scold him for being lazy or report him, but simply wants him to fulfill a request. The man in armor says that if he's caught impersonating an inspector, the guy says this. The girl says that. The man explains that the ghosts won't appear for a while and asks the girl if she understands. The girl says the ghosts won't appear and says there's no need to be so afraid. Everything's fine. The woman says it's simple, they just need to keep posting quests like before for new adventurers who are short on cash, and adds that that's all. The man says that, as he said before, he has one request and confirms it. The guy says that's definitely true. The girl says it won't cost much. The girl says she hopes he's sincere and is counting on him. The man says that this is the end of the discussion and asks her to sign the application, after which he confirms his consent. The completed application appears on the table. The girl says she's glad they fulfilled the request and that perhaps the whole problem of ghost hunting orders disappearing has been solved. The guy responds by calling the girl by her name, Diz. The girl says that the story told earlier was indeed true and clarifies that it was about her being an inspector. The girl says he misunderstood. She never said she was an inspector. The man says it's true. The boy says that if this becomes known, the other will be in trouble. But the girl explains that this is normal, since the church is outside the Lord's jurisdiction. Royle explains that when he was a gatekeeper, church officials would pass through the gates without proper vetting, and they were always told not to mess with them. The girl explains that she's practically like family to them, and even if she's caught, she'll just get a reprimand and that's it. The woman brings food and thanks them for waiting. The man listens to the girl. Royle says the food looks delicious. The guy says it's time to celebrate Sandy joining them and completing her first task. The girl says a toast. The guy says it's pretty nice and that things like that happen. The girl asks Royle how his adventure life is going. Royle explains that he has an apprentice named Sandy, and they hunt ghosts in the evenings. He reports that there was a panic which happens once in a decade. Royle explains that his mana reserves and spell power have increased significantly. He says it was fun. The man explains that it was the best day of his life when he was accepted as an apprentice and expresses gratitude. He says he's glad to hear it and suggests continuing to complete tasks to increase his rank. The man thanks him. Then we see a man in bed with a book, followed by a shot of. Royle reports that even though they finished the quest yesterday, he clearly feels that he still has a long way to go to truly enjoy the life of an adventurer. He tells her the title of the book, Conversation Techniques for Popularity, and says he'll learn how to have a proper conversation. The girl greets him, and he responds with Master and calls her Sandy. Royle says it's time to put into practice what was written in the book. He says that the letter M means to accept what the other person says. The man says good morning and expresses slight confusion. The girl says that yesterday she was again wondering if it was awkward that she showed up so suddenly. The woman says she was looking forward to it, and the man says everything is fine too. The text explains that the letter I signifies agreement or confirmation. The girl says she is very happy. The girl says she's glad to hear it. Royle says she doubts he's good enough to be her master. The text explains that the U is an invitation to continue the conversation. The girl says it's perfectly normal and she's well versed in analyzing magic, though she's still far from mastering it, and simply seeing Royle's magic is enough for her. Royle expresses surprise and says it's amazing. The girl reports that it was the AIUEO back channel, which she learned from a book, and turns to the master. Royle says he'll definitely master his magic, and the master replies that the girl is very motivated. The man reports that it's much easier to talk to her than yesterday. He says it's surprising. The book is called Communication Skills for Popularity. Royle explains that yesterday he learned that he's apparently attractive, and that if he continues to improve his communication skills, he can actually get better at it. Royle then attempts to say hello, saying amo, gee good more, foo, while two girls at the table respond. He says that as soon as they are ready, they should try their best in the first dungeon today. The man agrees. The girl expresses doubt that she will become too popular at this rate. The man and the girl confirm their readiness. The narrator informs them that to go to the dungeon, they will. The girl says he's a Sakuran knight. Royle replies that he used to be a gate guard. The girl says that makes him elite. Royle explains that's not entirely true and asks how the transition back happened. Royle reports that he was assigned to the northern gate, through which almost no one passed, and he cannot consider himself elite. The girl says it's amazing and asks if she can shake his hand. The man tells her she's incredibly smart. A woman asks a man's name, and he replies that his name is Royle. The woman says she'll never wash that hand again, and the man says that people actually say that. The girl says the guy's presence in this city must be some kind of top-secret mission and promises not to tell anyone about it. The guy replies that yes. Royle thanks her for her service and says there's no problem. They can go through. The girl says Royle is too cool. Royle remains silent and then explains that he couldn't find the time to respond or say anything, and ended up letting the girl completely misunderstand. Royle reports that things have gone smoothly in the past because he's talked to Sandy, who basically agrees with everything he says. The girl says that's not bad, Mr. Elite Gatekeeper. The armored man responds, "What? That was it?" The girl says it's time to switch gears and focus, because they're finally heading to the dungeon they've been waiting for. The guy replies that he needs to get his act together. Royle reports that there are many dungeons around Melky City, which serve as gathering places for monsters. He explains that the main attraction is a high-difficulty dungeon, the Great Labyrinth of Melky. The story explains that the dungeon they are about to enter is known as the Dungeon of Beginnings, and is considered a dungeon for beginners, and that if they fail to complete it, they should give up their dreams of becoming adventurers. The girl tells him that he looks happy, and he replies. The guy says the name Miguel with a questioning intonation. The guy asks if they are also going to the demi-human lair. The girl explains that they are going to the beginner's dungeon and that they are at rank F. The guy says that he just debuted the day before yesterday and asks what kind of place this is. The demi-human lair. The girl explains that it is a GN. Royle announces that they will go in that direction. The man warns not to let down their guard, adding that it's obvious. He says this is what it is. A man in armor, a woman, and a girl are walking along a forest path. The man in armor leads the group, the woman and girl follow him. The guy says it's a dungeon. The boy says there's only one exit in the castle and explains that if they go down the hallway, they'll end up in a hall where they might be spotted. The girl says it's better to go up the stairs and onto the roof to avoid the guards. The man explains that there's a rope on the roof that can be used to. The boy says being in the dungeon has him worried, but he needs to calm down. The man agrees and says the boy is right. The girl explains that it might be because of the panic incident yesterday, and there's no one around. The girl says it's Royle. Royle says there's a room ahead that should contain monsters. The top right panel informs us that there are finally monsters beyond this point. In the top right, a girl says she wonders what kind of monsters they'll encounter. In the top left, a man and a girl explain that the weakest monster is just a slime, and the man asks if it's slime. Royle reports that in adventure stories, it's usually slimes or goblins that are defeated in the first battle. The girl says they'll each get one opponent. The girl notices an approaching slime and strikes it. The man casts a fireball spell. The guy says it was very fast. He says he's activating an absolutely impenetrable barrier field, but the guy says he wasn't mentally prepared yet. The boy strikes, saying he didn't know his master's spell could be used like that. The girl reports that the slime just disappeared along with the magic stone. The girl asks as if something happened, to which Diz falls to the floor and screams. The girl shows him some magic stones and says they're magic stones. The armored man asks if this is the first time he's seen such stones, then explains that underground monsters drop magic stones when they're defeated and asks if the girl knows why adventurers go into dungeons. The woman explains that such people are a minority, and the adventurer's true goal is to collect and sell magic stones wholesale to make money. Royle says that with such stones, one can't get enough of romance. The woman adds that with such a magic stone, you need 10 of them to buy one loaf of bread. The girl says there's no need to be so upset, because there are ways to deal with it, and explains that slugs can be defeated simply by punching them or stomping on them. The man listens. The woman suggests checking the next room. Royle explains that physical attacks with weapons are effective against enemies. Royle reports that there are also many slimes here, warns that one is heading straight for him and says it's time to act. The girl casts a fireball spell and releases it from her staff, damaging the slimes. The man watches. The woman says there's an attack coming up ahead and turns to Royle. Royle says he'll definitely handle it this time. Royle and the woman dodge the attack. The woman kicks the attacker. The boy screams, expressing fear. The boy stands with his back to the slime. The slime looks at the boy. The mage explains that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses. Royle says yes. The man falls to the floor after being hit by the slime. The next panel shows a door labeled, Next Room. On stage, 3 slimes move and make sounds. Royle announces that this is the only way for him. Royle launches magical projectiles that penetrate everything. The scene depicts an explosion or a powerful release of energy without text or speech. The girl in the hat says it's amazing.